Aradakim, Shalom, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahawashi, Ba'ashem Rakak Wadash, that honors the apostles and elders, great millstone, for teaching us his truth. And salutations to the sincere Akim and Aquath that may listen. May the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Brother Raquai. I'm back in here with another quick and Lord's will as always, an edifying lesson. And for today's lesson, I have on the screen it says Agape and Tobit's Admonishment. So, what really inspired this lesson, was something I put together on the fly, because I had a situation, I had to deal with something in regards to an experience with one of my elders in the camp, and I just wanted to do an spiritual extrapolation and a spiritual understanding of what, essentially what charity can do, especially in times to come, right? Not just really, well, yes, in these times, but also mostly in times to come, right? Because we live in a time where, for example, we have the love of many waxing cold, and wars and rumors of wars, and all these different things that you read about in, like, for example, like Matthew chapter 24. All these different things, all these perils, all these dangers, so to speak, are, these are things that are coming upon the earth, right? And in this particular time, what we need is a hedge of protection. We need a savior. We need a hedge of protection, right? So, I guess I just wanted to do a little spiritual extrapolation in regards to a couple of things, define a couple of words, bring in a couple of precepts, and Yahweh Rataza, Yahweh willing, this lesson may be edifying. So, hopefully you can hear me. I'm just chilling outside. I didn't want to be inside at the moment. It's nice and cool outside. So, so let's define some words. So let's get an understanding of the title I have here. So let's get agape first, what it means. So here it says brotherly love, charity, in ecclesiastical use, the love of the Most High for man and the man of the Most High. It says also greet with affection, receive with friendship, to like, love. It sometimes is explained as agape, to protect greatly. It says love, so essentially love, right? So essentially it is, loving, our brethren. Essentially that's one of the two greatest commandments that Yahweh Shai even spoke of. I think that's in Matthew, I believe the 22nd chapter. So, and admonishment. Let me get admonishment as well. Admonish. Okay, so admonish, it means to remind and urge, exhort, warn, give warning. It says, where is it? Warn, advise, urge. It's kind of like a good, a stern reminder. It's just, essentially kind of stay on the right path, right? So, without further ado, let's go to First Peter's. It says, 1 Peter's 4 verse 7. Right, so 1 Peter's 4 verse 7, it says, but the end of all things is at hand, and therefore be ye therefore sober. So essentially be having a clear mind, right? And watch unto prayer. For above all things have fervent charity amongst yourselves, for charity shall cover a multitude of sins. Use hospitality one to another without grudging, as every man has received the gift, even so minister as the same one to another, as good stewards of the manifold grace of the Most High, right? So we use essentially, and this is one of the things we use our grace period for, to kind of essentially kind of like give our, win brownie points, with Yahweh Bashim El Shai, because, in these times, we're not going to have, there is going to be a, how do you call that? There's going to be not a reduction, so to speak, but there will be a time where, okay, cash is no longer going to be the thing. We're not going to have to be able to access, bank accounts and so on and so forth. So using the, the tangible, so to speak, cash that you have now, right? Whether you have a little bit of substance or, you can use that to, have that exemplify that fervent charity amongst, your brethren, right? Even amongst, like, your parents and your folks too, if they ask you for something, if they need help, and, they're in good spirit, they're pleased to dwell with you, and so on and so forth, right? You can use these things to actually win brownie points with Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, right? Because this would give us favor, right? We want the Lord to essentially remember us in the times of Jacob's trouble and these times that we're coming into, right? Because we're not going to be able to, rely on a bunch of money, to save us out of these things, right? And that's the mentality essentially that Jake has. Because, like, for example, this rapper named Rick Ross, for example, he's the type of person, he has his bunker and, it's this and that and the fourth, but, what he doesn't have is Yahweh Bashim Yahushai to actually, be your hedge of protection, right? Because you can easily be crushed, if it's the Lord's will, he can easily be crushed just being inside his bunker. If something could collapse on the bunker and he can be crushed and he can die in that situation, right? And that could be his judgment, right? So, it doesn't mean that he can escape judgment just because he has a bunker, right? So, I'll read verse 9 again. Use hospitality one to another without grudging, right? So not really having an evil eye, right, while you're doing it, right? Not having, any malice or any intent, because that's an invitation for, like, Satan to get in, because it says in, I think in Peter's also, Satan cometh as a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour, right? So, just being mindful of these things too. If you feel like you have that, grudging feeling, so to speak, maybe you should kind of counsel and get that out of the way before you actually, bring that offer of giving to a person, right? If this is what I'm saying actually makes sense. So, so moving on, let's get 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 1, and it says, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not charity, I have become as sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, as though I could remove mountains, and have not charity, I am nothing, right? So Paul's describing, man, you could have all these different gifts, the gift of prophecy, and I think in the next chapter he goes into that, if you have the gift of prophecy, if you have, you're exceptional, you're able to, break down certain things, you're able to converse in multiple languages, a man could have all of that. But if a man doesn't have charity, then Paul says, what? I'm absolutely nothing, right? So it's a very, very heavy statement, right? Because like in the precept I read earlier, you can cover a multitude of sins, right? And this is why we're in this condition as a whole, when you really think of it, because we sinned against the Lord, and He used the other nations to punish us, right? So why not use the resources that you might have. And I use the word resources very, I guess, very limited. I don't want to put a limit on what the Most High can do, because, like, when you really think of it, resource. Yes, money is a resource, it's a defense, but you can also, charity can also be, your time listening to a brother, for example, I know, giving somebody your time, counsel, for example, and all these different things can count as, charity as well, right? It's not just limited to money per se, right? That's why I'm saying this. Verse 3, it says, "And though I bestow all my goods and feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned and have not charity, it profit me nothing. Charity suffereth long and is kind, and charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself or is puffed up," right? So, when you really think of it, like when you have to give to somebody, you really, it takes, it. Sometimes I think that Jake has a wicked mindset when they might have when they try to give to, when they try to give for a good cause, because they try to gloat and say like, oh, I gave, I gloat in, oh, I gave this person $100, and so to speak, right? Like if you're just gonna help the person, just help the person. Don't you have to announce it like a lot of these scribes and Pharisees, for example, when they would pray, they want to be able to be seen of men, right? But the Lord knows what you did, so you don't have to, why are you looking for men's attention for that? But I'll continue reading, and it says, "Though doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Charity never faileth, but whether there be prophecies, they shall fail, whether there be tongues, they shall cease, whether there should be knowledge, it shall vanish away," right? So, this is, a charity can go essentially a long way, right? And the Lord can remember these particular things. I'm going into the spiritual aspect of what it can do, So, let me get an account. I want to get two accounts. So I want to break this up, right? So I want to get an account of somebody who had substance and what they did, right? And somebody who also had substance and, for lack of a better word, what they didn't do and what they should have done, right? So let's go to the latter. Let's get 1 Samuel. So I'm going to get to the second part of the lesson, at the end. So it kind of like ties it all together. Just bear with me on this. Okay, this is 1 Samuel chapter 25, verse 3, and it says, "Now there was a man named Nabal, and his wife, and the name of his wife Abigail, and she was a woman of good understanding, of beautiful countenance, but the man was churlish, evil in his doings, and was of the house of Caleb." Excuse me. Let's get that word. Whoops. I want to get that word churlish. So it says peasant, one of lowest class of freemen. It says man, fellow freeman of low degree. Man of the common people, free peasant, common man. Right, so it says David heard, so this is David before he became king, right? So it says, "And David heard in the wilderness that Nabal did shear his sheep, David sent out 10 young men, and David said unto the young men, Get you up to Carmel, and go to Nabal to greet him in my name. And thus shall he say to him that liveth in prosperity, Peace be both to thee, peace be to thine house, and peace be unto all that thou hast. Now I have heard that thou hast shearers. Now thy shepherds which were with us, we hurt them not, neither was there aught missing unto them, all the while they were in Carmel. Ask thy young men, and they will show thee. Wherefore let the young men find good favor in thine eyes. For we come in a good day. Give, I pray thee, whatsoever cometh to thine hand unto thy servants and to thy son David. So essentially, David sends this young, he sends some men to go see Nabal, right? Because Nabal essentially what he has is a lot of substance, sheep, oxen, cattle, so on and so forth, right? And he's sending the men essentially in good faith in his name, right? So, when David's men came and spake to Nabal according to all the words in the name of David, and ceased, Nabal answered David's servants and said, Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants now these days that break away from every man from his master. Shall I take my bread and my water and my flesh that I have killed for my shearers, and give it unto men whom I know not whence they be? So Nabal is like, okay, who is this David that you speak of, right? Why am I gonna take my resources? So the reason, resources in the time that you guys had. Okay, why am I gonna take my sheep, my oxen, my cattle, my wine, all that I have, and I'm gonna give it to some, people I don't know? Keep in mind, King David. Well, sorry, he wasn't even king at that time, but King David. He had slain Goliath, and he had an up and coming reputation, right? So verse 12, it says, So David's young men turned out their way and went again and came and told him all those sayings. And David said unto his men, Gird thee on every man his sword, and they girded on every man his sword, and David also girded on his sword. And there went up after David about 400 men, and 200 abode by their stuff. So it's like, okay, so David was kind of like in that warlike spirit. He's like, let's go mess this guy up, right? Because David's he's being persecuted, by King Saul, and he needs, essentially what he wants is some substance to kind of get him through his journey, right? So this is an example of a man, okay, he had a lot of stuff, he had a lot of resources, sheep, oxen, things that can help, a quote-unquote godly man, right? Not even quote-unquote a godly man, right? Because he was a man after the Most High's heart, and this is what he did, right? So let me get a precept. Sirach 12:2, and it says this, Do good to the godly man, and thou shalt find a recompense, if not from him, yet from the Most High Yahweh, Bashim Yahushai. It says verse 3, There can no good come to him that is always occupied in evil, and that giveth no alms, right? So always be being mindful of giving to the godly men, right? This is why we essentially, we try to have and exemplify that charity amongst, us as brethren, right? Because that's part of also rehearsing the righteous acts, right? Being that good example, right? So I don't want to get too much into the story. I kind of wanted to bring out a second account of the spiritual aspect of having alms and giving alms, right? If some substance, if you got it, right? Let me get. I'll start at verse 1, but the point's really in 10. So this is Tobit chapter 14, verse 10. Verse 1, and it says, "So Tobit made an end of praising the Most High, and he was 8 and 50 years old when he lost his sight, which was restored to him after 8 years." So essentially, Tobit, he had to see some bird poop. I think it fell in his eye, and he lost his sight, right? So then he got it back, right? And then it says, "And he gave alms and increased in the fear of the Lord Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, and praised him." So this is the admonishment that Tobit's when you read lower down in the chapter, he's giving to his son Tobias, right? So it says, "And when he was very aged, he called his son and the sons of his son, and said, My son, and said unto him, My son, take thy children, and behold, for I am aged, and I am ready to depart from this life." Right? So he tells his son to essentially, flee and go into Media, right? Because they heard of the prophecies regarding Nineveh and so on and so forth. I just want to jump down for the sake of time. This is the point I really wanted to hit here, right? So just keep in mind that, your dad's telling you, flee. Like, that's kind of, when you really think of it, like this particular account, you could translate this to us as well, because, we hear about the judgment that's going to happen unto Babylon the Great, aka America. And it also says in Revelation, "Come out of her, my people, and be not partaker of her sins." So chapter 14, verse 10, and it says, so this is continuing on in that admonishment. It says, "And bury me decently, and thy mother with me, and tarry no longer at Nineveh." So it says, remember my son, how Ammon handled Achikeres that brought him up, how out of the light he brought him into darkness, and how he rewarded him again. Yet Achikeres was saved, but the other had his reward, for he went down into darkness. Manasseh gave alms and escaped the snares of death, it says, which they had set for him. But Ammon fell into the snare and perished, right? So he's also recalling an example of how, this particular individual, they were able to escape the snares of death, essentially, right? Because they gave alms and they were charitable and so on and so forth. So this is on the spiritual aspect of what alms can do, for us brothers in this time, right? Because, man, we have a lot of sins to pay for. Let's just put it, even myself, right? So not even gonna sugarcoat it, right? So this something to keep in mind, when I guess opportunities to exemplify certain characteristics arise, right? Even myself, I have things to work on myself, because even in situations like when you help like homeless people, you always kind of have like a second doubt in your mind: is this person really homeless, and does this person really need help, right? But you do what you can, right? And we hope the Lord eventually will justify us and protect us in these times of trouble, right? So I'll read verse 11. Verse 11 is good. It says, "Wherefore, my son, consider what alms doeth, and how righteousness doth deliver. When he had said these things, he gave up the ghost in the bed, and being 108 and 50 years old, he buried him honorably, right? So, this is kind of like Tobit. This is Tobit giving his son like a final admonishment, before he passes away, right? Giving him instructions, right? So, the scriptures say that riches profit not in a day of wrath, but righteousness can deliver from death, right? So anyways, I sincerely hope and pray that this lesson was edifying. I really hope this brought some comforting and some understanding to your ears, and hopefully this would be something to also work on and exemplify these fruits of the Spirit, like you read about in Galatians. So I'd just like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakak, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone for teaching us His truth. Till next time, I say Shalom.